everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to all my subscribers. We're so close to 200. I never thought we'd get this far, but here we are. I appreciate every single one of you. Today I wanted to talk about the new movie, 65. 65 is directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who both have done nothing of note. My dad and I both have a thing for dinosaur movies, so we wanted to go check this one out. The synopsis is as follows. After a catastrophic crash on an unknown planet, pilot Mills quickly discovers he's actually stranded on Earth, 65 million years ago. Now, with only one chance at a rescue, Mills and the only other survivor, Koa, must make their way across an unknown terrain riddled with dangerous prehistoric creatures. So without further ado, let's get into 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. The plot of this movie is obnoxiously simple. The film opens with Mills and his wife talking about how he's about to leave on a 2-year space mission that will provide them enough money to take care of their daughter's undisclosed illness. He then takes off, and at some point during his trip hits an asteroid field and crash lands on Earth. After discovering Koa, who's the only other survivor, they have to try to make their way through the prehistoric landscape to an escape pod that will allow them to leave Earth. And that's it. It really is people versus nature versus creatures. They throw a couple roadblocks in the way in addition to that, like the fact that Mills and Koa don't speak the same language. This movie was just slow and boring. We've seen a lot of dinosaur movies done before, and it's hard not to compare this one with that, but even without that, there's not much about this movie that sets it apart in unique ways. And by the time you get to the end of this movie, 1, you're thankful that it's over, 2, it's super predictable, and 3, even though it was predictable, you're still disappointed. So unfortunately for me, plot gets a thumbs down. 2 is family friendliness. 65 is rated PG-13, and like I mentioned, there's some scary moments, there's some jump scares, there's a mild bit of profanity, and there's action and creature blood and gore. They don't cross the line with any of it, and honestly there's not much action in this movie. So if you're comfortable letting your kids watch movies like Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, this one kind of fits the same bill. So use your discretion, but for me, family friendliness gets a 50-50. 3 is acting and script. Really, there are only 2 actors in this movie that you need to be concerned about. Adam Driver and Ariana Greenblatt. I think Adam Driver is a decent actor, and I think that this was one of his weakest performances. On top of him just having a lot of moments where he's breathing in weird ways, his lines just weren't that great. The script of this movie is super weak. It's easy to tell that in a movie like this because there's not many lines in the film. Not to mention the fact that Koa doesn't speak English, so she technically doesn't have any lines.
But the thing is that even after making the realization that they didn't speak the same language, Mills would continue talking to her in full-blown conversations as if she did, and only when it was convenient for the plot did she seem to understand. It made it stick out like a sore thumb, and it was kind of annoying to see on screen.
So this movie almost solely rests on the shoulders of Adam Driver, and his performance is not enough to save the movie and the script. It's like they saw how boring the script was and then threw a bunch of things at the wall to see what stuck, and all of it slid off. Near the beginning of the movie, there were 2 or 3 jump scares that were completely worthless, and I was like, man, this movie kind of gives me the LaCroix horror vibes that Multiverse of Madness did. And then when I was watching the credits, I found out that one of the producers of this film was Sam Raimi. You can clearly see his influence in this film, even though he's not the one directing it. And again, I think it was to the detriment of the film. They also try to incorporate a couple humorous moments, and that stops about 1/3 of the way through the movie. There's multiple times throughout the film where you go from one scene to the next and you don't know how the characters got there or how they escaped from a certain situation, or how Mills will just happen to have the right tool in a given situation, even though you didn't see him carrying it before. There's just a lot of conveniences written into the script of this movie. So for me, acting and script get a thumbs down. 4 is character development. Though you get some backstory into the character of Mills, all the character development is super surface level. His wife and daughter are in one scene, and though they try to build the connection between Mills and Koa as if Mills sees Koa as his daughter in this moment when he's not with her, the whole dynamic just doesn't work. You feel nothing for the characters involved in this movie. The character arc between Mills and his daughter had the potential to mean something, but they completely wasted it. To the point where when the twists and turns and realizations happen in each of their character arcs, you literally don't care. And there's absolutely no character development whatsoever with Koa. There's no on-screen chemistry between Mills and Koa whatsoever, and it drags this movie down quite a bit. So for me, character development gets a thumbs down. 5 is visuals and CGI. There's maybe 4 or 5 jump scares in this movie that are completely wasted and unnatural, and since that's not the vibe of the entire movie, it just seemed really out of place. Though some of the dinosaurs look a bit awkward and weird, the CGI is pretty good. The creatures look good, Mills' weapons and tools look good. So though you didn't see it much, those were the parts that worked in this movie, and I have to give visuals and CGI a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. 65 is an hour and a half long, and though that's a very short runtime in this day and age, this movie was so boring that it was almost intolerable. What I found is that the length of the movie doesn't necessarily dictate whether or not it feels too long or too short. It's all of these elements that I talk about in a movie and what the director does with it. And in this case, 2 unknown directors and 1 well-known producer couldn't make it interesting for the life of them. In the words of my father, this would be a movie that you throw on at 1 p.m. on a Saturday in the middle of winter while you're trying to fall asleep for a nap. For me, rewatchability gets a thumbs down. With all these areas considered, I have to give 65 a 3.5 out of 10. This movie had a very boring and split genre plot, an incredibly weak script, subpar acting performances, and such weak character development that you didn't care about anyone in this movie. So with that being said, I definitely would not recommend going to see 65 in theaters. Your time and money are better spent elsewhere. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen 65, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.